Hi, this is Colin from the History Pilgrim. I hope you've been enjoying my videos and I'd be interested to hear your comments. Be sure to subscribe and share with a friend. New Zealand, an often overlooked nation, is one of the most isolated and hauntingly beautiful countries on the planet. In this video, I will cover the country's transformation from its earliest settlement to modern times. Long before Europeans arrived on the island, it was home to the Māori people. These indigenous people arrived from Polynesia sometime around 1200 AD, making it one of the last places on the planet to be settled by humans. In 1642, Dutch explorers found New Zealand. However, it was a British explorer, James Cook, who first mapped and explored much of the island. By the early 1800s, much of New Zealand was effectively an independent Māori-controlled society, but shifting British interests changed that. By the 1840s, the British continued to push the native people off their land. This led to the New Zealand War, a conflict from which the British emerged victorious. Gold was discovered in New Zealand in the 1850s, which led to thousands of people from Europe, Australia, and China to settle in New Zealand. Towns such as Reefton and Greymouth became boomtowns overnight, filled with muddy streets, tents, and thriving saloons. A significant yet often overlooked part of New Zealand's gold rush history is the contribution of Chinese miners. Chinese miners formed tight-knit communities and developed innovative mining techniques. For much of its history, New Zealand functioned as a vast agricultural outpost of the British Empire, supplying meat, wool, and dairy to the motherland. With its damp climate and green rolling hills, the country was ideal for ranching. From the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, the whole country was essentially one giant ranch for the British Empire. The introduction of refrigeration allowed beef and mutton production to skyrocket. Wool was another product New Zealand produced in massive amounts. And by the mid-1900s, there was more sheep living in New Zealand than humans. For much of its modern history, New Zealand remained a footnote of a nation in the minds of most people. Despite having incredibly stunning landscapes, this extremely isolated country with a tiny population was often overshadowed by its much larger neighbor Australia. That all changed with the release of the Lord of the Rings films, which finally propelled the nation to global recognition. When British explorers first arrived in New Zealand, they found some of the most varied landscapes of any nation on Earth. Being such a hard place to get to with so few people, the only thing New Zealand was really ever known for was sheep farming. In the late 1990s, director Peter Jackson made a bold decision to use the amazing natural scenery of New Zealand to bring Middle-earth to life, in adapting the Lord of the Rings novels into motion pictures. This resulted in the stunning landscapes of Middle-earth being brought to the big screen. The rolling green hills, misty mountains, and fjords that the nation contains is unlike anywhere else on the planet, making it the perfect location for a film set in a fantasy world. The Lord of the Rings movies grossed over $3 billion at the box office, and transformed New Zealand overnight from an obscure travel destination into a household name. Fans of the Lord of the Rings movies flocked to New Zealand like never before. Guided tours took visitors to where key scenes in the movies were filmed, and local businesses capitalized on the newfound attention. Between 2000 and 2006, the nation's international tourism increased by over 50%. Airlines which served New Zealand painted their planes with Lord of the Rings characters, and a statue of Gollum was installed at Wellington International Airport. New Zealand is a country known around the world for its stunning landscapes. The Southern Alps dominate the South Island and tower up over 12,000 feet above sea level. Temperate rainforests cover the west coast of the South Island, and deep fjords with towering cliffs line the country's coasts. Today, New Zealand has become a hub for extreme sports, particularly bungee jumping, a sport which became world famous because of New Zealand. The world's first major bungee jumping operation is near Queenstown, New Zealand, with a drop of over 440 feet. This location is a mecca for extreme sports enthusiasts worldwide. The Amazing Race, a competitive travel show broadcast to millions around the world, played a pivotal role in introducing and glamorizing New Zealand as a hub for extreme sports. From the very first seasons, The Amazing Race was lauded for its globe-trotting spectacle, and few places better captured the spirit of adventure than New Zealand. The show's format, teams racing across continents, while performing tasks tied to local culture, naturally lent itself to showcasing the most thrilling, picturesque, and sometimes terrifying activities a country has to offer. Contestants navigated whitewater rapids through the rugged gorges of the South Island, or jumped off bridges in Queenstown. Audiences at home weren't just watching a game show, they were being introduced to a new kind of tourism. These episodes painted New Zealand as not just a backdrop, but as a character, wild, daring, and spectacularly vertical. Queenstown, often dubbed the adventure capital of the world, became synonymous with bungee jumping, canyon swinging, and skydiving, all broadcast to a global audience that might have never heard of it otherwise. Caving has become extremely popular in New Zealand. The thrill of navigating deep into the earth, discovering hidden chambers and rock formations, has made the nation known for adventure seekers worldwide. Before New Zealand became known as a hub for tourism, it faced extreme isolation and difficulties economically. The nation is located over 1,200 miles away from Australia, and is extremely vulnerable to economic failure if demand for one resource fell. Even after World War II, when influence from the British Empire began to wane, New Zealand still struggled. During the 1970s, New Zealand lost its privilege for trading access to British markets. This meant for decades New Zealand remained a sparsely populated island forgotten by most of the world. Today, New Zealand is known as one of the most developed nations on the planet. People from around the world continue to move to the island. There has been a huge Indian population moving to the nation in recent years, bringing their cuisine and culture to the island. As a result, Indian food restaurants can be found virtually everywhere you go in New Zealand. One of the nation's biggest challenges is preserving its native culture. Due to the fact that many New Zealand residents who are of Indigenous descent were forced to speak English, the native language was on the verge of going extinct. However, in recent years, there has been active campaigns to teach the language in schools to help revive it. One of the key factors driving growth in New Zealand is its farming sector. The world's population is expected to reach over 10 billion people by 2050, putting pressure on food production. As a nation known for producing high-quality meat, vegetables, and dairy, it is a country extremely well-positioned to act as a breadbasket for much of the world. While dairy and meat production have historically been what the country is mainly known for, horticulture is becoming increasingly significant. Crops such as kiwi fruit, apples, and avocados are in very high demand globally. In conclusion, the history of New Zealand is a story of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. From its earliest Polynesian roots to its role as a British colony, to its emergence as a modern multicultural nation, New Zealand continues to carve out a distinct and promising path in the world. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe and share with a friend. Sincerely, The History Pilgrim.